And today I'm going to explain you exactly what can you expect from this course, what will be the course structure for this accelerated bootcamp, and what is the exam structure, what is the blueprint of the exam, how are we going to cover those things, how this course is going to help you get your CCNA certification. Not only that, but also gain some confidence in the configuration and the hands-on. So it's a completely hands-on course. First of all, you will see. And of course, in the same session today, we are going to also understand how to set up the simulation software, the emulation software that we are going to use for practicals and labs every week. So this week we have just the introduction. So you will get this whole week to set up everything before we start the actual topics from the next week, right? And one of the first topics that we will do is actually IP addressing and subnetting, which is very important for CCNA. So even next week also, you will not need the labs because it will be theoretical lab, not configuration, before we jump into the configuration parts like switching and routing and security configuration. So don't worry, you will have the whole this week to set up everything. And today, not only I'm going to have the introduction, but as well, I will show you the complete setup procedure for the emulation software and how to use it. So you can actually follow this video, and the recording for this video will be available to you for lifetime access as well. So you can always come back to it. And to add to that, I also have created a PDF document with the images and everything with the step-by-step procedure. Once you download the OVA file I sent you in the email, what to do after that, after downloading that file, exactly what will be the procedure. So everything you will get from there. And of course, even after all these things, if you get stuck somewhere and if you don't see any solution or you don't understand the solution, definitely you can get in touch with me and we can fix it together before we start the class next week, right? So before we understand the software itself, let's understand the course structure and also how is it going to help you in passing the exam. So one thing that when we are creating this course, it's an accelerated bootcamp course, as you can see, is that Christian and I both were thinking there are many bootcamp courses out there, but they are generally like 5 days or mostly 5, 6 or 7 days, maybe a week, where they go through all the CCNA topics in those 5 to 7 days. And it's so much information actually compressed into a week that it becomes overwhelming if you want to have some time for configuration, for having the time to get the hands on and then having your doubts, getting those doubts cleared and then moving on to the next topic. You don't get that time if you go for a normal boot camp, which is generally few days only. So we wanted to create a program which is spaced out a little bit, right? So that's why we created this 8 weeks course where we'll go through particular technologies or the topics from the CCNA blueprint, CCNA exam blueprint every week, and it will be completely hands-on. So I'll start with the configuration, and then if I need to explain something, we will understand topics while we are doing the configuration of the protocols. So you directly jump into the configuration. You also understand the backstory of the protocol. So we are not just going to blindly learn the commands. We are going to understand the meaning of things. And remember, anytime you learn something new, there are always 3 questions that you need to know the answer of to get the complete picture of the technology. What is the technology we are talking about? Why do we need it? And how to configure it? Now, the why part is important because we need to know what problem is it solving so that we get the motivation. Our brains are actually interested into things where they understand what problem a particular technology is solving instead of just trying to cram all the commands or just to learn something. If you know the objective, we see the problem, we see the possible solution, and now we understand, okay, that's why we use it. So now it is just the practice, the question of practicing, because the how part, how to configure it, its command line, its configuration, which nobody expect you to remember immediately or to recall immediately. That comes with the practice, right? So if you understand the logic, if you join the Zoom session and after the Zoom session, you say, okay, now I can explain at least in a one line that what STP does or what OSPF does, what is the objective of an access control list. That is fine. If you don't understand or if you don't remember you understand, but if you don't remember the commands exactly, don't worry. Nobody expect you to remember these things right from the first time you are learning those things, right? That will take some time of practice. That's why this course is spaced out into weeks. So every week when you do some practicals, when you see me doing the practicals, explaining things, and when I send you the labs, same labs to do during the week, you have ample time to do them many times and become very comfortable with it. And if you have any questions, get in touch with me, get the answers, and move on to the next part, right? So this way, we have a phased and a systematic and a gradual approach to keep on building up the knowledge that we learned from the last week and the next week. And that way you will see that it becomes much more streamlined and much easier to achieve the goals of learning CCNA topics, right? So having said that, first of all, let's understand the course structure of this Zero to CCNA lab course. So this course is once a week, as I mentioned, and the reason we kept it is already clear. Now I think that we wanted to make sure that we have time to practice ourselves. Like if I teach you how does uh, EIGRP, sorry, how does OSPF work, or how does BGP work, what is the concept of access control list, what is the concept of network address translation, then you should get time on your own as well to practice it as many times as you can before we move to the next topic next week. So it's a boot camp, of course, as we know, but it is an accelerated boot camp in the sense that we are covering everything in a boot camp style. So it's not a 24-week course like we have a Zero to CCNA class, which is actually 22 weeks, almost 6 months, again weekly, but that goes very slowly, and we actually take our time to understand everything in very slow manner, right? This is a boot camp, so of course we are going to cover all the topics in 8 weeks, but it's not a general boot camp because we don't just do everything from our side and then leave you guys after 1 week to understand everything. Instead, we are with you for the next 8 weeks, and even after that, if you have any questions, it's a lifetime access to the recordings and to the support. So even after 6 months, you have a question and you send me an email, I'm not going to tell you that, hey, your course is done, you can't ask me questions. That's not going to happen. You can get in touch with me anytime after the course as well for any technical questions that you have, right? So it's going to be once a week, and the course, the Zoom session duration is 2 hours per session. But I always say in my classes is that these courses are topic driven, not time driven. So some topics will actually take less than 2 hours, some will take more than 2 hours. So it could be a little bit plus and minus here and there. But it's just a reference, a rough idea that we have roughly 2 hours of Zoom sessions. And in these live Zoom sessions, I'm going to explain you the concepts, and also I'll show you the lab configuration. So let's say that if you are starting a new topic and you're wondering what exactly this particular protocol does or this configuration does, I'm going to go through that structure I just explained earlier. What is the technology we're talking about? Why do we use it? And how to configure it. And how to configure part is the lab configuration part that comes. So the concepts, which is the what and why, and of course the lab is the how part, which is the configuration part, right? Just to give you an example, if you hear a word ether channel, now in Cisco there is a technology called ether channel. So first of all, the question comes in mind is what is ether channel? So what happens is that we have many networking devices to connect our computers, printers, servers, IP phones. There are so many devices that we need to connect to network. And for that, we have switches. Switches are the devices that enable communication between different computers, different devices that you have in your LAN. Now, if you want to have a bigger network like multiple story building or multiple buildings, that means you will not be able to do it with a single switch. You will need one switch on every floor, maybe one switch in many switches into the many buildings, and then you need to connect them to each other. And what happens is that that can become a bottleneck when you have an upstream uplink going from one switch to another switch, because one side you are connecting to 30 computers, and then all the data coming from 30 computers you are sending to another switch over a single cable. That can be a bottleneck. So ether channel allow you to connect more than one cables, more than one connection between switches, and combine them into a logical single cable, a logical interface, so that you can increase the throughput or increase the bandwidth. So you see that this is just an example, and of course, I'm not teaching you ether channel right now. I was just giving an example that this is how we start to understand why we need something. So ether channel is basically bundling multiple links together. But why do we need that? We need that because we need more bandwidth between, or more speed between two different switches, because they are actually connecting multiple computers to each other. and we don't want that to become the bottleneck. And then when this is clear, then it is just the configuration that you need to learn, and we will do that here as well, right? Now for the configuration part, for the lab part, we actually use an emulation software called EVNG, and this allows you to create multiple routers and switches connections to each other, and then we will be able to do all the practicals that we need to do for CCNA level, right? It's an emulation software. That means it is using the actual operating system images, just like that you find into a router or a switch. Those real operating system images are in the backend, just that the front end is not a hardware, it is a software, right? That's why it is called an emulator. It's not a simulator. Simulator is actually a software mimicking the real device. It is trying to uh, clone the real device in a way that it will show you the same outputs like a real device. But at the end of the day, it's a software. It doesn't have all the features as the real device. But if you're using an emulator like we are using, we get all the commands that you will actually see in a real switch or a real router, because we do have a real switch or real router. It's the same operating system. It is just that the front end is a software. And for this, I have sent you the OVA file, right? And I will, in a minute, I will show you, explain you how exactly you can set it up step by step, everything. But yeah, this is how we are going to go. Every week, we are going to go through these labs. And this is going to be an 8 weeks course. So it will basically, today is just the introduction session and EVNG setup session. So actual course will start from the next week. The actual topics will start from the next week. But of course, it's an 8 week course. But we might go 9 weeks also, depending on if I feel like I need to give you some extra practice lab or some like a bonus lab. We'll see how does it progress, because this is one of the first bootcamp implementation we are doing. Right before that, we had the slow configuration or the slow implementation only, the 0 to CCNA course. This lab course, we are trying it first time. Trying in the sense that we have done it before also, but with a different name. So that's why I'm saying that it might take one more week at the end, in case if I see that I need to give you a bonus lab or maybe need some extra support for some certain topics that you want refresher, right? So in this course, although as I mentioned initially that it is a completely hands-on course, but don't get confused. It doesn't mean that we are not going to give any attention to the theory part. We are going to understand the theory also in depth, whatever is needed for that particular topic for the CCNA level. So when I say in depth up to the CCNA level. So don't worry, I'm not going to give you so much detail about OSPF that you would need for CCIE, because first of all, it will just take more time. Second, you will not need it for the CCNA level. And it's always a good way to gradually go through CCNA and then CCNP and then CCIE. So learning everything right from the beginning right now might not be a good idea. So in-depth means up to the CCNA level, maybe like slightly more. So you can call it CCNA plus. We will understand few more things than what you might need it for the exam. But it's always good to know more than what you need for the exam, right? And of course, these theory sessions will be, or these theory concepts will be followed by multiple practical labs. So we will do many configuration examples, many practical labs. It's a completely hands-on approach every single week. So for all the 8 weeks, except the first week where we will do IP addressing and subnetting, the remaining 7 weeks, we are going to go through many practicals, many configurations on the real devices, right? So for the practical part, you will see that I am going to show you a lab file, which is into the PDF format, which will have the instructions, what you need to do. So configure OSPF, configure STP, configure Ether channel, whatever the instructions are there, they will be there into the PDF file. And according to the instructions, we will configure the topology that is inside the OVA. So the OVA file I sent you, the emulation software I sent you, EVNG, that has all the topologies we are going to use. And on these topologies, we are going to configure devices based on the instructions from these PDF lab files that we have. So right into the Zoom session, within this live Zoom session, I'm going to teach you the concepts, followed by the configuration based on the PDF lab. And then after the class is done, I'm going to send the PDF file along with the solution to you on your email. So the reason for this is that so that during the week when we don't have the Zoom session, you can actually do the same practice again and again, and not to cram anything, but to understand it more deeply and become more comfortable in the configuration and in the hands-on. That's why I always tell my students that when you are into the Zoom session, of course, you have the mindset of learning, which is very obvious. But when you are doing the lab on your own, so I send you the lab PDF. Don't try to test yourself. Don't think, okay, how much do I retain from the class? These are commands we are talking about, and commands take time, right? So don't worry if you don't remember the commands. You can always go to the solution file as many times as you want. You can watch the recording of the session as well, which will be available for lifetime. And if you get stuck somewhere, you watch the recording, you see the lab solution file, you understand, you see the solution, but you don't understand it, why it is done like this. You can contact me also. Support is also there all the time. So the idea is that your mindset should be of learning even during the off time into the week when you are doing the lab on your own. So feel free to check the solution file as many times as you want. As soon as you get stuck, check the solution file, and your brain will remember, okay, I had this issue and now I know the solution. So I will remember it the next time. And of course, the phased repetition as many times as you do the labs will actually help you to regain the information or retain the information more, right? So this is a completely hands-on approach course, as I mentioned already, and we have the UNG-based topologies with multiple routers and switches. And in today's session, I will also show you step by step how to set up UNG, and then I will show you these topologies and how to start the devices, how to connect to their CLI, and how to save the configuration, how to shut them down, how to start them next time. Everything will be explained in this session, and it is also recorded into a PDF document. I'll send you the document after today's class as well. Of course, the most important thing is you have the lifetime access to the class recordings. That means you can watch them again anytime into the future as well. So sometimes what happens that you get stuck into some other works, life happens, and you come back after 6 months and you say, okay, I want to do it again. I want to refresh my knowledge. So not only you will have the recordings for you completely included into the course, so no extra charges, lifetime access, but also in case if something changes into the CCNA exam, and we decide to include few more topics or remove some old topics from the portal, from the recordings, you will get the updated recordings. It's not just that whatever you learn, that's all you will get. Anytime there is any change after 3 or 5 years, CCNA changes, you come back to recordings, you will see the latest information there as well. So that is actually a big help and a big advantage of this course as well, which makes it quite unique compared to other things, right? Now, apart from this, if you want support from me, like if you have any questions during the live Zoom session, of course, you can ask questions. But let's say during the week, and you are doing practice on your own and you have a question, how can you actually approach me? How can you ask me the question? So we have a Facebook group, which you can join. And this Facebook group is basically for all the Karothol students, our organization. So you will see all kind of people there learning CCNA, CCNP, CCIE, learning Juniper, learning AWS, cloud configurations, Linux. So if you have any question, you can actually take a screenshots also of the configuration where you're having issue. You can post very detailed questions. And the benefit of that is that, of course, I will answer you for the question there. So if other people also, other students also have the same question, they will get the answer by just seeing your question and seeing my answer. Or if some students are already on the CCNP, CCI level, they might already know the answer. They may answer you even before I can answer. So that's a great community where people can help each other as well and see each other's questions and answers. So that is the primary method of asking questions, recommended method. But apart from this, if you don't use Facebook, or if you don't have Facebook, and or if you currently maybe you are not able to access Facebook when you are watching the video or something, you will see that below the recording of the video, there is a comment section where you will be able to directly ask a question that also comes directly to me. So that is the second option. So the website is 02it.com. I will also post it into the comment where you can go 02it.com. And Christian must have provided you your own credentials that you can use to log in, and you will get the recordings every week. So as we go through the course, of course, the recordings will be posted there in few days, and then you will be able to see them for lifetime, right? And when you click on the recording, you're watching it. Below the recording, you will see the comment section where you can ask the questions, and you can get the answers there, right? So that is the second option. And of course, the third option and the least preferred option is to send me an email. So that might be a little bit delayed to answer because we use email only to send labs and to answer any support question about the classes or the timings or the payments, for example, with the Christian and some software related issues. So if you have any technical issue from within the course, the preferred method is Facebook group or the comment section into the recordings, because that helps others also to see your question and see my answer. But you can ask the question on email as well. That might just be a little bit delayed to answer, right? So first of all, let's talk about EVNG. So as I mentioned, that EVNG is the software that we are going to use to do all the practicals. It's the emulation software. So let's introduce EVNG and then we'll see the step procedure also, how to set it up, right? So we are going to use EVNG as a virtual machine. That means there is a Linux operating system, Ubuntu, where the EVNG software is installed inside the operating system. So you need to install this operating system into VMware. So don't worry, you don't need to install Linux and set up EVNG yourself. Everything is compiled into an OVA file, right? That I sent you the link, the Dropbox link to download. And once you download that OVA file and you import it into one of the hypervisors like VMware, then you will be able to start using the topology. So in EVNG, we recommend to use VMware because that's what we are also using. So if you get stuck somewhere about if you have any issue about hypervisor, we will be able to help you very quickly because we know all the possible issues with VMware, right? But if you are using let's say a different hypervisor, if you're using Microsoft hypervisor, or if you are using the Oracle hypervisor or some other software like KVM, we might not be able to help you very fast because we are not using that hypervisor. So we have to see what issue it might have with the EVNG. So recommended operating system is Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows 7 is also okay. And recommended VM software is VMware. So VMware you should already install before you can import the OVA. If you don't have VMware, you can download it from the Broadcom website. Broadcom is the organization who has purchased VMware now. I mean, it has taken over VMware organization. But the Broadcom website is not very clear right now. It is a recent takeover, so it's a mess currently. So if you have any trouble downloading the free version of VMware, which is called VMware Workstation Player, then you can also download it from our Dropbox. So that link also I have sent you into the email. So let me know into the chat if any of you have not received that email with the OVA. So you will see the headline CCNP, CCNA lab OVA files. So if you haven't received the email, you can let me know. And if you have received it, then you have this whole week to make sure that you download the files and install VMware and then import the OVA based on the procedure that I will show you in this Zoom session. And also I'll send you a PDF document, which actually records all the steps. So you will be able to do it during the week, right? All right, I see a question from Janaya. Yeah, Janaya, I'll send you today this information. So don't worry, you will have this week to set it up, as I mentioned. So why do you need to import the OVA? Because EVNG as a software itself is a free software. You can go to evng.net and you can download it. And there are procedures also how to set it up, everything. But the only thing is that it takes time to learn how to download it, how to set it up. And it's a Linux operating system. So it's just a shell, right? It's just a platform where you can use different different networking devices. So it doesn't have any operating system images from Cisco or any other vendor. So it's a completely blank shell. If you download EVNG on your own and you install it on VMware, and then you will see you are there with a blank Linux screen. So you will have to somehow procure the operating system images for routers and switches. You need to somehow copy them to your that Linux backend of EVNG, and then you need to license them from within the Linux. So you need some Linux configuration to license them, and then you need to open it into the GUI, and you will be able to create the topologies. And then you will have to think, okay, what topologies can I create? How many routers should I use? How many switches should I use? How should I connect them to make sure that I can do everything that is there into the CCNA exam blueprint and I don't miss anything? So you see, there are so many steps you will have to do, which is completely available. You can learn about it on the internet. You can try to do it on your own, but it just takes time. And we wanted to make sure that you can start getting your hands dirty with the configuration of Cisco devices instead of wasting your time into procuring the the environment for that will be needed to get your practical and configuration done every single week, right? So that's why we created this a pre-compiled single file, the OVA file that I sent you. It has the OVA, it has the EVNG software inside it. We have already copied all the operating system images, routers and switches images into it. We have already licensed it, and we have created the topologies also. There are pre-built topologies into this where you just need to boot the devices and you can start configuring them right from day one. So everything is working. You just need to import this pre-compiled OVA file into VMware. That's why it becomes very easy for you guys, and you can start working right from day one, right? Just a second. So topologies are already set in EVNG. You don't need to create anything on your own. And I have already sent you the OVA file, right? So you can just need to import it into EVNG. I'll show you the procedure in a minute. And you need to make sure that you have enough RAM for this. So we recommend to have at least 8 gig of RAM in your system. So if you have an 8 gig RAM laptop, you can give 6 gig to the EVNG. If you have 16 gig laptop, you can give 8 gig to EVNG or VMware. The idea is that don't worry, even if you give 6 gig or 8 gig, it is not going to start using all of it. It gradually starts using it more and more when we put more and more devices. So it's a EVNG is a very lightweight software, and router switches images that we're using are called IOL images, iOS over Linux. They are also very lightweight devices, so they don't consume so much resources. So 8 gig will be more than enough. Even 6 gig that you give to EVNG should be enough, right? Networking, on the other hand, you need to connect to EVNG on a browser, just like you open your browser for your Facebook, Google, Gmail, whatever you open. Instead of that, you will open an IP address there, and for that, you need to set the network interface to NAT, and it will actually look something like this into the VM property. When you open the VM property, you can set the memory to whatever you want. So you can actually drag it down or up right hand side this bar. You can set it to 8 gig or 6 gig, or you can type here also up 6000 for MB for 6 gig. And you can see on the left hand side, network adapter has to be set to NAT. So you will see two network adapters here, network adapter 1 and 2. So we don't care about the second one. You can ignore that. The first one has to be set to NAT. Now I have already set to NAT before I created the OVA file. So when you import it, you should actually already have this set to NAT. But in case if you see something else, then make sure to change it to NAT before booting the VM, so that you can get the IP address and you can open it into the browser, right? So as I mentioned earlier, I have created a document, a PDF document, where I explain step by step what you need to do once you download the OVA file and the VMware workstation file, right? So VMware workstation is just the VMware software. Just next finish. You install it with a GUI, and once you install the VMware software, it will actually look something like this. Here, you can see here, the VMware software will look like this here. This one, right? So in this software, you will have a blank screen because you have a new VMware. So you see these different names here, like 0 to CCNP or Linux Mint or New Security, Linux Server 1. These are all the VMs. And one of the VMs will be your CCNA lab, or one of the VM will be your EVNG. And when you install the VMware, it will be blank. So how will you get this EVNG to start working? You need to import the OVA file that I sent you. So the OVA file that I sent you, let me show you that. Right. So the OVA file that I sent you is the name of the file is CCNA lab. So let me show you the properties of this. The file I sent you into the Dropbox is around 8 gig. You can see it's a 8 gig file because it contains the EVNG software, it contains the routers and switches images, and all the topology and everything is there. So you need to download it. Make sure that it is 7.91 gig, 7.91 gig. So you have the same file. There is no error into the file. And once the OVA file is downloaded, it is there. Then you can start importing it into VMware, right? So how do you do that? So as you can see into the PDF file that I'll send you after this class. It shows you exactly what you need to do. So first of all, install the VMware workstation. Once it is done, then we import the OVA file. So how do we do that? We go to the player, file, and then open, or you can press Control plus O also to open. And then you need to go to the location where your OVA file that you have downloaded, and you have to give it a name. So the name, you can give it anything, whatever you like. And I have given it a name like CCNA lab or CCNA lab class, like this. So let's do this. We go here on the VMware, you go to the player, file, open, and then you go to the location where you have this CCNA lab OVA file, right? This has to be an OVA file. It has to be 7.91 gig. You click on open, and then when you're doing it first time, you're opening a new OVA file. It asks you for the information I was mentioning earlier, the name of the virtual file. You can give it any name you like, but if you give a descriptive name, it will be better, like CCNA lab class or something like this. And then the location where you want to save it, right? So I want to save it into this C drive, or I can change it to another location, depends on the requirement. So that is completely entirely up to you. Let's say I want to do it in the F drive, make a new folder, CCN_lab, and click on OK. So it will be installed here, the VMware, sorry, the EVNG software. Then you can click on import, and then it will start importing like this, right? So once it is imported, you will see that it will show up like this. I'll cancel this one because I already have here. You can see the one selected right now, CCNA lab, this one. So when you click on it, once it is imported, okay. So once it is imported, you will see on the right hand side, it shows you some information about it. Like currently it is powered off. It is based on Ubuntu. I have given it 8 gig RAM, but you can again click on edit virtual machine settings to change these settings. Again, in the document, you will get this detail. Like once it is installed, you will see it here like this. You can see, and then change the settings to correct values, right? So we select the VM and click on the edit virtual machine settings. So you can see that we'll click on this one, edit virtual machine setting, which is here. I click on that, and I get to this page. And this is what I was showing you into the PPT as well, right? You can adjust the RAM, how much you want. You can make it up or down. So I want to set it to 8 gig exactly in my case. In your case, you can make it 6 gig, but not less than 6 gig, right? If you want a smooth experience, at least 6 gig you should assign to it. And in the processors, you can actually make sure that this box is checked, virtualize Intel VTX. But sometimes you may get error because of this. For example, I received an email from David, right? David, you sent me an email that you are having an error. So if you see an error that the system is not booting, you can come here and uncheck it, and then try again after clicking OK, and then it should work. So the preferred method is to virtualize the Intel VTX, which allows you nested virtualization. It actually improves the performance very slightly, but to be honest, it actually starts showing impact on the CCNP or CCI level. On the CCI level, you will not see much difference. So if your system is not working when you check it and the system is not booting, you can uncheck this and then click OK, and then try to play the virtual machine or try again. And then if it works, that's great. If it doesn't, it still doesn't work, then you can contact me to see what could be the issue. But mostly this is the issue with this some of the students, that the virtualization, when they enable it, it doesn't work because they did not activate virtualization in the BIOS. You need to activate in BIOS for this to work. And this is what I was talking about, the network adapter. The first one, if you see two of them, the first one has to be set to net. So if you see bridged or host only or anything else, just change it to net, this one, and that's what we'll have to use, right? After that, you click on OK, and then you can click on the play virtual machine. Then it will start booting. So you can see in the document, after this, we set these things. We have to uncheck this if it is not coming up, right? The processor virtualized Intel VTX, and then we boot the VM. So what happens is that when you boot this virtual machine, we are booting the Ubuntu Linux operating system, which is hosting the EVNG software. So it will actually leave you at this GUI, sorry, not GUI. It will leave you at this CLI, right? Where it will show you an IP address here, like use HTTP://192.168.79.177. and then it shows you a login screen. You can see EVNG login. Now you don't need to log in here. Why? Because this is the backend. This is the Linux operating system login screen, which is hosting EVNG. So you have to log in here if you need to copy new operating systems, you need to license them, or you need to do anything else maintenance wise for Linux, which you don't need to do, right? You need to just open the topologies to start practicing. So you don't need to log in here. We are booting it to note down the IP address, because the IP address that you see here into this green box, that is the IP you need to open into any of your favorite browser, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, or Microsoft Edge, whatever you use. So as I mentioned, you don't need to log in here. Just note down the IP address and open in a browser. So you can see here in our case, we will come here. So in my case also, you can see that it is showing me the IP address here. You see, IP address is 192.168.79.177. Now in your case, the IP might be different. It will be different. So you need to note down your IP that you see here at the second line here. And then you need to open it into a browser. So you see, I'm not logging in here. Although it is showing me this login screen, I'm not logging in here. I will just minimize it after noting down the IP, and I will open the IP into a browser. So let me go ahead and show you that. I open the browser, Google Chrome, and then I'm going to open that IP 192.168.79.177. So when you open this IP, it will actually leave you at this screen, right? It will actually bring you to this screen, which is the EVNG GUI or graphical user interface screen. That's where you will spend most of your time during this course, because that's where we have all the routers and switches and topologies built, right? So you don't need to log in here. Again, I reiterate, once you boot your EVNG, it will show you an IP here and then a login screen. Don't log in here. You just need to note down the IP. You can see that it is the same IP I type here, and then it leaves you at this GUI. Here you need to type the username admin, and the password is EVE or EVE, which is the name of the software, right? EVE. And the same information you can see into the document as well. Once you log in to the browser, you see this screen where the username is admin and the password is EVE. And you click on sign in, and it actually leaves you at this screen. So let me show you again. It will show you, it will leave you, it will bring you here when you type the IP address into the browser. Username password is admin and EU, sign in, and it actually brings you this screen. This is the list of topologies that we will use in our course. So you can see that we have a switching topology, layer 2 switching, and we have a routing and services topology. So we have only two topologies, but we will do all the practicals and different things every week on the same two topologies, right? So first of all, the layer 2 switching topology or routing service topology, any topology, when you click on it, you will see that on the right hand side it shows you a small diagram, that what diagram it is going to use, right? So you can see that different diagrams are there for both. So when you click on one of the topologies on the left hand side, on the right hand side it shows you a small diagram, and below that diagram you have the option to open this topology, edit this topology, or delete this topology. So what you need to do is to open the topology, right, to start using the routers and switches. So you click on open, and it brings you the topology. You can see that we have three switches here: switch 1, switch 2, switch 3 in the middle. Switch 1 is connected to two computers, PC1 and PC2. Switch 2 is connected to two computers, PC3 and PC4. And switch 3 is connected to a router, R1. And we are going to use different switching practicals on this. We are going to learn VLAN, trunking, Ether channel, CDP, LLDP, spanning tree protocol. All these things we are going to learn over the same topology, different configuration every single week. So how do you start using the topology when once you open it like this? One thing you must notice here, that all the icons are gray right now, and you see a square box, very mini square box before the name, like SW1 as the square box before that. That means the currently devices are shut down. They are not enabled. So we need to boot the devices first. We need to start the devices first. How do you do that? You can do that individually as well. Like you can just right click on one device and click on start, right? On any device you can click and on start. Or if you want to start all the devices, you will see on the left hand side, when you hover over your mouse, there will be an expanded menu. You see here on the left hand side. You can see it shrinks when you are somewhere else, but when you bring your mouse on the right hand side, on the left hand side, you see this uh, menu. In this menu, you need to go to the more actions and you need to click on start all nodes. Again, more actions and start all nodes, right? When I click on that, you will see some messages on the right hand side that the devices are started. And now you see that the color has changed to light blue color, right? Sorry, dark blue color. And then a play button is there now before the names, a small play button. That means the devices are booted, right? So now you will be able to click on the device and connect to the terminal to start typing commands to configure the devices, right? So that's what we will learn every week, what we need to type, what need to configure based on the lab files that we will have. But the idea is that now you will be able to access the devices. And again, let's see the document file. Once you log in, you will see the topology list. You can see here. When you click on the topology, it will show you a small version of it on the right hand side, and then the option to open the topology by clicking on the open. And once you click on the open button, you will see that it shows you the topology here. And on the right hand side, on the left hand side, you have the option to go to more action, and either you can start all nodes, stop all nodes, or wipe all nodes, right? So start and stop is pretty clear. We need to boot the devices or we need to shut down the devices. Start and stop is clear. You also have an option to wipe all nodes. What is the wipe all nodes? Basically, what happens that every week you will see that there is some pre-configuration already there. When you start the devices, they don't start blank. You will see that there is some configuration already there. Like for example, host name SW1. I have already configured the name of the switch to SW1, and some other configuration might be there. Like on the PCs, there will be some IP addressing configured already. So this configuration is called the pre-config, right? Or the base config, you can call it. So whenever you start a devices and you start configuring it according to the labs that we will do, I will also show you how to save the configuration so that if you shut down the devices and you start them again, you don't lose your progress, right? You still start from the same point where you left. So let's say I give you 10 points, or there are 10 steps to configure in a lab, and you are currently, let's say, on the fourth step, and you want to quickly go and run some errands and will come back to do this lab or resume this lab from that point. So what you can do is, instead of keeping it running, you can save the config and shut it down, and you can go to your work with peace of mind, because when you come back, you boot the devices, you will not lose the 4 points that you did before because you saved it. You can start from point number 5, right? So that is a great thing to do. But the problem is that, let's say you are done with the lab and you did all the 10 points and you saved everything. So the lab is already solved, right? Everything is already configured. And now if you want to do that lab again, how can you do it? Do you need to go every device and remove all the configuration that you did because you want to do it again? No, you don't need to do that. Once you are done with the lab and you want to do it again, that means you want to start with the base configuration again. You can go to the more actions and wipe all nodes. When you wipe all nodes, it actually sets them back to the base config. So all the configuration that you did will be gone, and it will go back to the previous state, and the devices will be shut down so that you can start them again and you can do the practical again. So if you are in the middle of the lab and you want to shut down the devices, save the configuration and shut them down. Don't wipe, so that next time you will resume from the same point. But if you want to start all over again from the first point, then you can wipe all nodes. And again, every week when we start a new lab, you should wipe the nodes, because you don't want any configuration from the last week's lab. You want to start from the scratch. And every lab that we will do every week, it will assume that you're starting from the scratch, starting from the base config, right? So now the big question, how do I access the devices? How do I connect to the device? So you just click on the device and it should open the PuTTY session for that. PuTTY is the software that we use, terminal software, to connect to the CLI of the devices. So for example, switch 1, I can click on switch 1 and I can click on this option open, and it should open the CLI session. And then I can start typing the commands that we need to type to see the configuration and everything, right? So don't worry about these commands. That these commands we are going to learn into the course itself. But the idea is that we can start typing the commands like that, right? Now, here's the thing. In your case, if you click on the device and nothing happens, or maybe you click on the device, this option comes at the top. That do you want to open the putty software or super putty software? You click on it and nothing happens. So what can you do in that case? Well, in that case, that means the putty is not installed on your system. So in the same document that I'm going to send you today, you will see this option here, that once you start all the nodes, you can click on the device to open the putty terminal. Now, if it doesn't open, you will need to install the EVNG Windows Client Pack. It's a very small software which actually installs the putty and also installs all the necessary registry files, Windows registry files, to link your browser to the putty so that you can click on the device and open the terminal, right? So you can download this EVNG Windows Client Pack from this link, which I have included into the document that I will send you. It's a in-house Dropbox link, so you will not go to any third-party website. Don't worry. It's from our Dropbox. So you will download this software, very small software actually. It's I think 40 or 50 MB something. You install it. Next, finish. Just select the default options. You don't need to do anything. Once it is installed, you will actually see that there will be a folder created under program files. So you can go to C program files. There will be a folder called EVNG. And in this folder, you will see many registry files. And one of the registry file will be Windows 10 64-bit putty registry file. So don't worry, even if you have Windows 11 or if you have Windows 7, the same registry file will work. So what you need to do is you need to double click on the registry file and install it. So you need to go to the C drive. In the C drive, you need to go to program files. So once that software is installed, you will see the EVNG folder here. You go to the EVNG folder and you see that we have a lot of files here. Let me see that here. Yeah. So the putty software will be installed as part of it that you will need to connect to the devices. But also you can see there are a bunch of registry files here. These are registry files, registration entries. So you need to look for the Windows 10 putty. So at the end, it has to end with the keyword putty. You need to double click on it, click on yes and okay. I'm not going to click okay because I already entered it before. But yeah, you can do it. And once you do that, you click okay, you will be able to click on the device and either the partition will open or it will show you a dialog box like this where you can click on open and then it will open the session for you, right? So that way you will be able to connect to it. So that's the information you will see in this document. It's a 6-page document, a PDF document that I'll send you with all the details. All you need is the OVA file already downloaded and the VMware already installed before you start following the procedure in this document, right? So you can go through this, and of course the recording of this session that we are doing right now will also be available to you in few days. So you can also follow the recording if you don't want to follow the document, but it's the same information in the document as well, right? So that way you can start using the software. So once you're done doing everything, you can click on more actions and stop all nodes. And also you can go to the last option here, or second last option, close the lab. So when you close the lab, you go back to the list of labs. Sometimes when you log in and you directly jump to a particular topology and you say, oh, I want to go to another topology, you can always go to the close lab and then you come to the list of topologies, right? And here you can sign out or you can just click close. That's not a problem. And that will close the browser. Remember, it doesn't shut down the EVNG. EVNG is this VMware VM that we have booted and we are on the login screen, right? So you don't need to shut it down, to be honest. You can just click on the pause and click on pause, yes, and then next time you can resume it and start using it. So you don't need to shut it down and it will boot faster as well anytime you want to use it. So I'm also going to do the same. Just click on suspend and it will be suspended. And that way you can use EVNG, right? So you have this week to set this up. And once you will be able to connect to the CLI of the routers and switches, what you need to do next, that's what we are going to learn from the next week onward, right? All right, having said that, what topics are we going to cover in this class? So we are going to have some practical topics. For this part, we will have these live Zoom sessions where, because it's a completely hands-on class, so we are definitely going to cover all the hands-on topics that you might see in the exam and beyond, with all the configuration. So these topics will be IP for addressing and subnetting, VLANs, VTP, Ethernet, STP. This is layer 2, and router basic config and secure shell configuration or connection to the router, static and default routing, OSPF version 2. So nowadays you don't have EIGRP or RIP as the routing protocol. They are no longer part of the CCNA. So you only have OSPF and IPv6 addressing, IP services. IP services actually include configuration like network address translation or DHCP. These things will be covered. Just a second, guys. And apart from this, we will also learn about security features like access control list configuration or some layer 2 security features. So in CCNA exam, you will see it's a 120-minute exam, 2 hours exam for the native English speakers, and you get 55 to 60 questions in the exam, right? Most of them are multiple choice questions, but there will be some simulation questions also. Means there will be some lab where you need to click on the device and configure it. So these are the topics where they will ask you the question from one of these topics, right? So we are going to do all the labs, which are actually slightly more configuration than what you will see in the exam. So if you do these labs every week that we are doing in this course, you will be more than prepared for the simulation lab questions. And remember, in the exam, the questions are weighted. Weighted means the practical questions have more weight. They are actually more scoring. So if you skip all the, let's say there are 60 questions in the exam and only 4 labs and 56 theoretical questions, multiple choice question. If you do 56 MCQ questions and you skip all 4 labs in the CCN exam, you are going to fail the exam because these 4 questions have more weight than the 56 MCQ questions. That's why hands-on becomes extremely important for the exam. And of course, hands-on is not just blindly typing the commands. We will be learning the valuable information about these topics, which will help you to answer many of the theoretical questions as well, the MCQ questions, multiple choice questions, right? And then there are some topics which are purely theory topics. So we will not cover them into the live Zoom session, but we got you covered. Once our live Zoom sessions are finished, we will open some bonus videos for you, the pre-recorded videos, where we will explain you how the wireless work, how the virtualization work, and how the automation and programmability concept work. So these, they will not ask you any practical question about these. You will never see a simulation about wireless or programming or any of the other automation configurations like Terraform or Ansible. But you need to understand what is Terraform. You need to be able to explain what is Ansible. You need to be able to explain what is AI, what is generative versus programmative AI. So these things you should be able to differentiate the basics, very, very basics. That's why these are just theoretical topics. You don't need any practical configuration for CCNA. So these will be part of the bonus videos that we will open after the live sessions will be finished, the 8 weeks course where we will concentrate on the hands-on part, right? And as I mentioned, the CCNA exam itself is the current version is 200-301 version 1.1. So it's a 120-minute exam, 2 hours for native English speakers. And if you are from a non-native English speaking country or your passport is from non-native English speaking country, then you get 30 minutes more, 150 minutes, 2 hour and a half. The type of questions that you get are MCQs, multiple choice questions, drag and drops, tables matching, and the biggest and most important, simulations. That's where you need to configure things, right? For example, security or OSPF or STP, these things. Total you will see in the exam depends on the version you get. You get 50 to 60 questions overall in the exam. So you can say you get roughly 2 minutes for every question. Now remember, although you get only 2 minutes for a question, but there are so many MCQs, multiple choice questions, which you will be able to answer within 5 seconds or 10 seconds. You read the question, you see the options, you select the one, and you move on. So you will actually be able to have more time for your simulations. Of course, simulations you cannot finish in 2 minutes. It will take more than that. That's why it becomes very important to do the MCQs fast enough so that you can devote more time to the simulations. So this is called the exam strategy, right? This is also something I'll help you at the end of the class. Before ending the class, I'll send you some practice questions that you can start doing So you can make sure that for MCQs you become faster and faster, because this whole course, this 8 weeks, is to prepare you for the simulations, the part which is having the more weight, the most weight. But others we cannot ignore, right? So at the end of the class, I'll send you practice questions, which you can go through a few times before taking the exam, and you will have a very easy time in passing the exam. After that, very easily you will pass the exam, right? So that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about in this introduction session. As you can see that the most important thing is to just set up the simulation software, EVNG, emulation software is EVNG, and be ready. But for that, you have a couple of weeks, because next week also will be theoretical topic, IP addressing and subnetting, where we will have a lab, but that lab will be a theoretical lab, right? There is no configuration lab for that. So you have this week and the next week to set up everything. So feel free to get in touch with me if you have any issues or concern or questions during the week, and I'll be more than happy to help you.